Chapter 20 of the Alps, the Danube, and the Near East. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Betty B. Belgrade. For the third time, I am in Belgrade. I visited the city 35 years ago when I went around the world from east to west on a honeymoon tour, and I stopped here again 20 years later with my wife and daughter on my second tour around the globe. In both of these trips, I came from Constantinople. This time I have come from the north, riding 9 hours on the train from Budapest to this capital of the Kingdom of the Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes, or as it is generally called, Yugoslavia. When I was here last, Belgrade was a dead town of 60 or 70,000 people. It was a kind of second-class opera bouffe show, the capital of the little kingdom of Serbia, which was always quarreling with its neighbors, the Austro-Hungarians and the Turks. The kingdom was then independent, but to the west and the north lay the great Austro-Hungarian Empire, rich and powerful, aggressive and domineering. The latter rather despised Serbia and her capital, imposing all sorts of trade restrictions, hindering communications, and doing everything to throttle Belgrade and to exalt Budapest and Vienna. The Belgrade of today is alive and booming. It is the capital of a country 8 times the size of Massachusetts, and of a people 1/10 as numerous as we are. The city is being rejuvenated. It is now shuffling off its old clothes, ragged and soiled with the wear of almost 2,000 years, and putting on the frills of the modern capitals of Europe. I am writing this amid the din of new building. The sounds of the hammer and saw drown the click of my typewriter, and the rattle of the concrete mixer and the clattering stutter of the riveting machine fill the air. Belgrade is about halfway between Constantinople and Paris, 60 hours by fast train from London, and about the same time from Constantinople. It has always been a capital of some sort or other. It was a Celtic village as early as the 3rd century before Christ, and was called Singadunum when the Romans took it and stationed a strong garrison there. It was a fastness of great importance when the Turks overran southeastern Europe and made their way as far north as Vienna. About 400 years ago, it was captured by one of the sultans, and for centuries the people were under Turkish rule. It was less than 50 years ago that they became independent and made Belgrade their capital. Indeed, not until after the close of our Civil War did the Turks evacuate the stronghold on the rock where Danube and Save meet. The old fortifications still stand. They are huge works of brick and earth encircled by a wide moat. Back of them is a park, from the promenade of which I photographed the citadel to show the shell holes made by the Austrians during the World War. I snapped my camera unthinkingly, and for hours thereafter feared I might be tapped on the shoulder by one of the fierce Serbian policemen and put in jail as a spy. But perhaps no one saw me, at least so far as I am safe. On the high plateau behind the fortifications lay the old Belgrade, and it is there that the new Belgrade is building. Come for a drive through the capital. We shall take a 2-horse carriage, for here taxis are almost unknown. The horses are spirited, and we hesitate when we look at the dashboard, which has been kicked to pieces this morning. However, the driver assures us that he can hold his pair in check, and we go bumping along over the holes in the wide streets, which are paved with wood blocks or cobbles. Now and then we strike a piece of asphalt or a stone roadway. Everywhere the streets are in sad need of repair. Belgrade was torn to pieces during the war. It was bombarded by the Austrians from across the river, and outside the town one may see hundreds of great shell holes in the earth that have not yet been filled in. The poor streets will be improved as soon as the budget permits, but despite their bad condition, modern buildings are going up by the hundred along them. There are many carvings, and some of the buildings are most artistic. The old city was one of 2 and 3 stories. The new structures are 5, 6, and 7 stories, for as you know, skyscrapers are few in Europe. The plan is to put up 20 government buildings 18 public schools, an opera house, a museum, a library, and a university. The city authorities have decided to make Belgrade the most beautiful city of the Balkans, and have offered prizes for plans which shall provide not only for the buildings mentioned, but for a great athletic field and a system of parks, a zoological and botanical garden, and 4 bridges across the Save and the Danube. The plans must include also drawings for a number of churches, railway terminals, and harbor works. It will, of course, take many years to complete such an ambitious scheme. Private building of every sort is being helped by the government. It has made strikes illegal and admits all kinds of building materials tax-free. New homes for workers and middle-class people are to pay no taxes for 25 years. Dwelling houses, regardless of size, are to be tax-exempt for 18 years, and for 15 years there will be no levy on apartments and stores combined. It is also provided that the government cannot requisition such new buildings, and all the rent laws favor the landlord rather than the tenant. The result of all these measures is such a building boom as I have seen nowhere else in my travels. I wish I could show our plasterers of Chicago, who are reported to be getting $20 for 8 hours labor, how the best men of their trade work in Belgrade. They are superior artisans, modeling in stucco and producing creations far above those of the ordinary workman. They are now receiving from 80 cents to $1 a day. This is for the men at the top. Other plasterers get less. The same wages are paid to carpenters, bricklayers, and machinists. Common labor receives from 30 to 50 cents a day, and the women who help at the building trades, mixing the mortar and fetching and carrying, get only 25 cents. In Yugoslavia, the woman is to be seen at work everywhere in city and country. She carries great loads on her back or shoulders. She digs and hoes in the fields. She rakes up and binds the sheaves of grain, which of the men cut down with cradles, and she keeps the streets clean. I took a photograph today of a gang of street sweepers in front of the palace of the king. There were 20 girls with a man as the boss. Each had a broom of twigs with which she scraped and brushed the dirt out from between the wooden paving blocks. The women wore picturesque costumes with a great deal of color. I am told that they are gypsies and that they receive from 15 to 20 cents a day. Some of the architecture of Belgrade shows the Turkish influence, but most of the buildings look much like those of the great European capitals. The Moscow Hotel has bands of green tiles around its various stories, and over the way is another large structure which is faced with rose tiles. A bank that has just been completed has its wrought iron doors plated with gold, and the new Franco-Serbian bank, upon which I have letters of credit, has a counting room finished in mahogany, with heavy brass moldings at the base and edges of the counters. The people are proud of their new buildings. I was taken out today to see a new paper factory going up in the suburbs, which will give employment to several hundred workers. It is a large 4-story structure and almost walled with glass. The proprietor told me that his machinery, which came from Germany, is the most up-to-date in the world. From what I saw, I believe his story is true. The mill will make the finest of book and writing papers, banknotes, and tissue paper for cigarettes. The owner said he could turn out his product at 1/6 the cost of its manufacture in America, and that he expected a big trade with Europe and Latin America, as well as most of the business of Serbia. I am stopping at a new hotel here, which claims to be the last word in hotel accommodations in the Balkans. It has a roof garden with an elevator that runs up but not down, and a cabaret where one can wine and dine from 9 in the evening until 5 o'clock in the morning. The population of Belgrade has nearly doubled since the World War. The city had something like 90,000 in 1914. It has nearly 200,000 at present and promises to grow right along. Before the war, Belgrade, as the capital of Serbia, a kingdom of about the size of Indiana, had a population of only some 4 millions to draw from. Now it is the capital of a land more than twice as large as the state of New York, with a population exceeding 12 millions. The people are made up of a half a dozen races. The men I see on the streets of Belgrade come from all parts of the kingdom, though most of them are Serbs, big-boned, straight, and well-built, with dark, serious faces and features somewhat like those of the Russians. The women are tall and fine-looking, and both men and women walk with a swing. The Serbs are most independent, and they seem bound to make their way in building up the new principality. Then there are the Slovenes and the Croats, who, as a rule, are better dressed than their cousins, the Serbs. There are the Montenegrins, whom you may know by their pillbox caps, bordered with black, which have crowns of bright red embroidered with 4 golden stripes. They wear short jackets and very full trousers tied in at the ankles and upheld by a great belt or sash at the waist. There are many Moslems from Bosnia in red fezes, embroidered jackets, and the full pantaloons of the Turks. There are Russian refugees wearing their shirts outside their trousers and the high hat of the Cossacks on their heads. There are also priests of the Greek Orthodox Church in great hats with gowns that reach from their necks to their feet and wide sashes of red silk showing underneath. Most of them have long beards and long hair. There are also the Serbian peasants in homespun, often of the brightest of colors. They wear short jackets and trousers tied tight around the ankles. Their feet are clad in shoes made of straps fastened to the soles, which are turned up at the front. The women are dressed even more quaintly than the men, and the whole makes a perpetual moving picture show worth coming far to see. Besides these picturesque figures, there is that large part of the population that looks just as we do. As a matter of fact, the upper classes of all nations now dress about the same the world over. The best time to see the crowd is from 5 until 9 in the evening, and the best place is on Tsaritsa Street. This is a part of the main thoroughfare of the city. The roadway, which is paved with wooden blocks laid by Russian workmen, was a present from the Tsar Nicholas, after whom it is named. It is a good promenade with wide sidewalks walled with fine stores. At 5 o'clock, the traffic policemen, some of whom are armed with muskets, shut off all carriages and cars, and the people fill the street just as they do in the Calle Florida in Buenos Aires and in the Uvador in Rio de Janeiro. The women wear their fine clothes. Nearly all have bare arms and necks, and the throng is a gay one. In contrast to the promenaders of other cities, these people do not loiter or stroll. They walk as though they were going somewhere, and their movements have a determination and a spring I have not seen elsewhere. Here and there along this promenade, and in fact on all the streets of Belgrade, are cafes, which overflow to the sidewalks. There are tables covered with white cloths out in the street, with men and women and children sitting around them, drinking, chatting, and reading the newspapers. Some write letters, and others may play cards or dominoes. The cafes are, to a large extent, the clubs and loafing places where the people come to meet one another and talk business or gossip. Scores of peddlers walk in and out among the tables selling all sorts of trinkets. There are beggars who get alms from almost everyone they ask, and there are men and women crying the newspapers. The Serbian newsgirl has a stentorian voice and shouts the sensational news while she pokes under your nose one of those sheets printed in Greek characters, which, although I studied the language 6 years, I can now hardly name. I have met a number of the newspaper men of Belgrade. They are bright fellows, many of them speaking several languages. 2 of the men I have talked with are graduates of Oxford, and a third studied at Cambridge. Nearly every reporter speaks German or French, as well as most of the tongues of this polyglot nation. They tell me the circulations of the newspapers are not large, the leading journal in Belgrade having only about 20,000 per day. There are small sheets scattered all over the country, and many party organs and periodicals of one kind and another. The wages of newspaper men are low. The best writers get from $10 to $12 a week, and the ordinary reporter much less. One of the lowest paid men on each journal is the jail editor, who assumes all responsibility for anything that appears in his paper. Even in the case of a signed article, if the man who wrote it denies that he did so, the jail editor will affirm that the work was his own, and when the government orders his punishment, he goes to jail without question. After serving his term, he is taken back on the staff to await the next offense. He receives a salary of about $10 a month, with a bonus after he comes out of jail in proportion to the length of his stay. End of chapter 20.